Yes.
because Frank Vetrano is, entering that big contract. It's his one chance at a big payday
Hmm.
that all NHL players work their basically the most of their careers to get to. And he has set himself up wonderfully, being a good foot soldier with the Ducks in a
Yep.
rebuild, also having a career year personally. So it's his chance to go and get that 5 year, six
Hmm.
year, whatever. Someone is going to give, I think someone's going to give it to him, even with some regression
Yes.
next season. And so for him personally, I just don't see how it would make sense. It wouldn't make sense for the Ducks. And I just think for him, like, go and get the biggest payday possible. You are in a grueling
Yes.
business, make it worth your while. Absolutely. So,
Agreed completely. And I think kind of all that being said, it just doesn't make sense long term for Frank Vertrano to be a Duck past. I mean, I would say at the absolute latest past next season.
yep.
And so that's why I think you at least need to explore the value. And the little tidbit of news we got about Frank Vetrano today from Elliot Friedman was the fact that Pat Verbeek's price is very high. And he is not someone that is necessarily going to step down from that. And the reason for that is that he views Frank Vertrano as someone that he could move next deadline and probably get still a really good value. So he's not going to move him for less than he wants right now if he can just get kind of what people are offering right now next deadline. Like he's going to ask for the world, and if someone meets that, then he'll move him.
Yep. So
Which is perfectly how I think he should approach it.
I guess that gets us into what's a realistic return. Like, what's the spectrum here of outcomes for Frank Vetrano?
So the only comparable that I could really come up with, and you and I talked about this briefly, and I want to give a massive shout out to Patrick over at the Hockey News, who kind of pointed this out in our Discord a bit ago. But a good comparable is Blake Coleman. And the Blake Coleman trade happened back in February of 2020, and it was for Nolan Foote and a 2020 first round pick, and it was a conditional first round pick. And it had to do with some conditions around Vancouver's lottery pick and things like that. So it didn't necessarily have to do with how Tampa Bay did or anything along those lines. So it was and Blake Coleman at that time was at 1.8 mil. And Blake Coleman was not having the type of season that Frank Vetrano is having right now either. Frank Vetrano's at 29 goals. Blake Coleman that season, I'll get it up real quick, but I believe he was maybe 21 goals with the Devils that year. Let me see. Yeah, 21 goals in 57 games. So Frank Vetrano is outplaying him. And so if you retain on the Vetrano deal, you end up at a very similar situation as what Blake Coleman was at, with a guy that is producing better than Blake Coleman was in a situation where the cap is at least a little bit higher than it was in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I think that's a good comparable. And also of note, didn't mention this, Nolan Foote was a 2019 first round pick.
Yeah.
By the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah, he was a late first. Should probably mention
Yes.
that. Like, he wasn't like an A-list.
Correct.
A-lister. But yeah, that's like you said, it was a conditional first.
Yeah, the conditions are if Vancouver's pick is a lottery pick, the 2020 first round pick will transfer to a 2021 first round pick.
Okay.
And so Vancouver didn't have a lottery pick because some of the I think Tampa had a Vancouver first rounder to move, basically.
So getting that for, like, that's a pretty good return. I mean,
yeah.
that is pretty much, I think, what you're looking for with a Frank Vetrano. And I guess my wonder here is Verbeek looking for more than that? Is Vetrano, is he looking at this saying, well, that's what Coleman got. Vetrano's an even hotter commodity right now.
Mm-hmm.
He should get more than that.
Yeah, like, I think he should.
How much more could he reasonably get?
Because like the Blake Coleman deal, we can kind of break it down to this. It was two late first round picks.
Yeah.
It was a 20th overall and a 27th overall first round pick. And so I think realistically you could look for 2 first round picks, or a first round pick and a very good prospect, or a great prospect, or if he's looking for a roster player, a good young roster player. And we'll get into what I'm thinking with that deal when I get into my predictions. But I think he's setting the price high, and he probably has a situation where a floor of what he would accept to deal at. I think this idea that he has his price and he won't come off it is maybe a bit too harsh. I would imagine there's probably some wiggle room there. But But I think he's just basically saying no to any team that's just significantly low and lowballing him.
And how much does the salary retention add in terms of value?
I think the salary. So this is a situation where we talked about the salary retention on Lyubushkin and how that amounted to a 6th-round pick. This is a completely different scenario because it bleeds into next season. And so it's the fact that you aren't just a lot of these salary retention deals are only for these final 20 some odd games. And the way the cap accumulates is it accumulates over time. So you're acquiring the rest of the accumulation. So it's not even the full cap hit or the percentage that's listed that team is taking on. But if you are retaining for next season, you are retaining for the entire season. And so that is what makes a salary retention on a deal that has term significantly more lucrative for the team that is retaining.
It's valuable.
Yes, it's very, very valuable. And I think for the Ducks, you have that capability next season, so they should be doing that.
So if it's a first-round pick and a prospect as like your floor, does the added retention, does that get you like another pick?
I think the added retention, it gets you at least another second. I mean, if Henry, let me ask. Kind of now, I'm just spitballing here. Henrique, you said the rumor is a 3rd-round pick for retention.
Yeah.
If that's the rumored retention on the rest of the season,
rental.
If you're retaining on Vartano, that has to get close to a 2nd or a 1st-round pick.